Prices are increasing at a slower pace in Singapore, with both headline and core figures coming down in March. Headline inflation eased to 2.7%, its lowest in 2.5 years, while core inflation, which excludes accommodation and private transport, is down 3.1%. Transport prices in particular fell by 0.3%, in line with lower certificate of entitlement premiums. Food inflation also declining to 3%, and that's thanks to a smaller increase in the price of non-cooked food. Now, analysts say it's helped by an appreciating Singdollar, declining global prices for commodities, and disinflation from Chinese producers. Still, they add that prices could remain high in the near term, due in part to hikes in goods and services, as well as carbon taxes.
In April, we'll have 7.3% hike to water prices. So it's not just consumers that are being hit by higher taxes and administrative prices, but businesses are also experiencing higher costs, and businesses may continue to pass on higher costs to consumers. In particular, we see that price pressures remain elevated in services segments such as health and education.
Well, to help us understand this further, we have with us Assistant Professor Aurobindo Ghosh from SMU, and he's joining us via Zoom. Prof. Ghosh, welcome. First, I want to ask you about the figures itself. Inflation, we're hearing that it appears to have eased, but it doesn't really feel like it to some people, does it? Why?
That's right. So thanks for having me, Jill. So indeed, when you look at the inflation numbers, we are looking at sort of a change of price of a fixed basket of goods and services that a representative consumer will use. So the inflation number, which is at 2.7%, much less than what was expected, and less than the 3.4% that we saw in February, indeed is based on that fixed basket. So while the fixed basket has actually gone down in price, and also dropped in price from year to year as well as month to month, it seems like that not everyone is using the same basket. So that's the reason why they might have a slight different experience of what their price impact and price experience has been. So that might be one of the reasons that we might be still feeling the pinch a little bit, even though the numbers seems to have gone down to some extent.
So different baskets for different people, but in your mind, overall, is the worst over in terms of inflation, or could a higher than expected rebound still occur like what we saw in the US?
So actually, for forecasters to say that, well, the worst is over is probably a death knell to the forecast. So it's indeed better to prepare for some other uncertainties that come in, like as analysts have also mentioned, that there has been not a surge, but a sort of an uptick in commodity prices, including oil prices as well. So we might see sort of a surprise, as we have seen the US market as well, where there was a better than expected jobs number. And of course, inflation also kind of ticked up a little bit. That can happen here as well. This is once again a month-on-month result, and also the annual increase was based on month, not a quarterly or a yearly one. So we will be cautiously optimistic to some extent that things might be coming down, but it might be a little slower than we hope for.
I have no doubt that your eyes also on the geopolitical considerations that could push up inflation, perhaps once again.
Of course, I think there are two major things that are going on geopolitically, as we have rightly seen. And one of them is sort of a strategic competition between the two biggest economies, US and China. So that might have some longer term impact on more deglobalization or some levels of protectionism that might come in. So that is definitely one of those trends that we see. And the other aspect, as we have also seen in the news, that there has been a couple of conflicts that have been brewing and sort of not really we are not seeing the end of it as much. So all of these things are causing things like essential commodities like oil that we are importing from outside to actually gain in price in the shorter run and stay elevated to some extent. And that might have impact on our cost implications. So indeed, geopolitical events do have an impact on our pocketbook very easily.
Taking it local, to what extent has the MAS policy on keeping the Singdollar strong contributed to the lower inflation data that we're seeing this time?
So MAS has been quite preemptive initially. So from October 2021 to October 2022, they actually increased almost every round 5 times. They tightened the monetary policy, which is basically appreciating the Singapore dollar against trade-weighted basket of currencies. So indeed, keeping Singapore dollar strong was to try to reduce the impact of imported inflations. Particularly, you can see the impact on food inflation, which has really come down because of these successful reduction in imported inflation, in my honest opinion. So that is definitely one of those things. Now, the other factor is with US being higher for longer in terms of the rate, we might actually see US dollar to kind of hold its position for a while. So maintaining what MAS did in the last round of their monetary policy cycle in April of this year seems to be the right direction, because we are not seeing the end of inflationary pressure in the US market. That's why the interest rate has been quite high there as well. So maybe higher for longer is the way to go. And in that sense, MAS has done in their mandate, which is non-inflationary growth, they have managed to some extent control inflation. And that hopefully would be a longer term effect, because we see the trend gradually subsiding, if not very fast.
Thank you so much for unpacking the figures for us. I've been speaking there with Assistant Professor Aurobindo Ghosh from SMU. Thank you for your time.